Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to SOC Sidebar, brought to you by the Federalist Society Student Division and the Federalist Society at Tulane Law School. My name is Nicole Alvarez, and I'm the president of the Tulane Law School chapter of the Federalist Society. Each month, the Student Division and a rotating student chapter hosts a Zoom series called SOC Sidebar, featuring a judge being interviewed by a student chapter president about the judge's passion, hobby, or interest, and how it interrelates with the law. Our 13th SOC Sidebar features Judge Kurt Engelhardt, who will discuss Mardi Gras. Judge Engelhardt serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. He was nominated to this position by President Donald J. Trump, confirmed by the Senate on May 9, 2018, and officially sworn in as United States Circuit Judge on May 15, 2018. Judge Engelhardt is based in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the John Minor Wisdom U.S. Court of Appeals building. Judge Engelhardt's roots to New Orleans are deep. He attended Brother Martin High School in New Orleans, where he graduated with honors in 1978. He attended Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, from which he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in History in 1982. And in the fall of 1982, Judge Engelhardt commenced his legal education at the Paul M. Hebert Law Center at LSU, graduating in May of 1985. Judge Engelhardt is a proud member of two Mardi Gras crews, one of which he serves as the chairman of theme development. And on the Friday evening before Mardi Gras, you can find him in the parade route on his horse Donut. At the end of this evening's interview, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. You must be logged in as a participant in the Zoom webinar to ask a question. Please use the Zoom Q&A feature to submit your questions. When we get to your question, I will read it aloud and address it during the session. So let's get started. How are you doing tonight, Judge?
Doing great, doing great. Happy Mardi Gras, and thank you all for joining us this evening. It's really exciting to be here and talk about Mardi Gras season, which we happen to be in the midst of right now.
Yeah, so kind of in a nutshell, because this is in front of a national audience, can you just explain what Mardi Gras is?
Yes, first of all, I will ask everyone, whatever you've heard about Mardi Gras, whatever conceptions you have about Mardi Gras, if you've not been here to see it, you should probably get those out of your mind. Most people think Mardi Gras is a lot of vulgarity or debauchery and partying and people drinking to excess. If you look for that, you can find that, but that is only a very small part of Mardi Gras, which is very family oriented. But essentially, Mardi Gras is a religious celebration, and it's a uniquely Christian and specifically Catholic celebration of the period before Lent, the period before sacrifice and the commencement of Lent on Ash Wednesday. So Mardi Gras originally began, the Mardi Gras season begins on the Epiphany, which is January 6th, also known as King's Day, for those of you of the Christian or Catholic faith, and will run until Mardi Gras Day, and then the next day is Ash Wednesday. And there are a lot of festivities that have nothing to do with all of the things you've heard about, the Spring Breakers and Girls Gone Wild, and all of the other things that you might have associated with Mardi Gras really have nothing to do with the real meaning of Mardi Gras or the real activities that go on in New Orleans during Mardi Gras season.
Yeah, no, I always find with talking to people from out of town, when I tell them it's a family event, they're very shocked because I've been going to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, I mean, and Mobile my whole life. So it's definitely a family-friendly event, and it's a lot easier to do that than people think. So how did the celebration of Mardi Gras begin?
Well, Mardi Gras actually was based upon the Council of Nicaea, Pope Gregory the Great. When the Christian calendar was set, it was determined that Easter Sunday would be at a particular time. And of course, as you all may or may not know, Mardi Gras is not a fixed date on the calendar. It moves on the calendar generally between early February and early March because it is based on Easter Sunday, which was set at the Council of Nicaea and Pope Gregory the Great. And after that, pre-Lenten ceremonies began in Europe. Mardi Gras here actually started in 1699. Mardi Gras was first celebrated in North America, we think the earliest recorded celebration was in 1699 when the French explorer Iberville happened to be coming up the Mississippi River, and about 60 miles below New Orleans, he realized that it was March the 3rd and that everyone in France was celebrating Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, sometimes known as Shrove Tuesday, I think, in England. And so they stopped at the side of the bank of the river, and the first Mardi Gras was celebrated. Did not involve parades or costumes, but was celebrated in just south of New Orleans. And there have been other Mobile had a Mardi Gras celebration, and there have been other ways to celebrate that have grown. But that's how Mardi Gras started. And again, I emphasize, and I kind of like the fact, I like shocking people, as you say, by telling them, no, this is a very religious holiday. Thank you for joining us to celebrate a very Christian holiday.
Right. So I know you mentioned Mobile. So my hometown is Mobile,
Mhm.
right? And growing up, that they still, I guess, tout themselves as the birthplace of Mardi Gras. But that seems to conflict with what you said. I mean, I agree with you with that it started in 1699. But do you have any? Can you shed some light on how Mobile could claim to be the original home of Mardi Gras?
Yes, Mobile deserves a lot of credit. So their claim to some influence over the creation of Mardi Gras is not a false or idle claim. In Mobile, they began celebrating Mardi Gras around in the 1830s. However, their Mardi Gras, and they also instituted parades to celebrate Mardi Gras, but the parades were on New Year's Eve prior to the commencement of the Mardi Gras seasons. But they had the first Mardi Gras parades before New Orleans did, so they can claim a certain amount of credit. The other important feature that Mobile lends to Mardi Gras is a group of men who are called the Cowbellians. They have a unique name of the Cowbellians de Requin. And about 6 of those gentlemen moved from Mobile to New Orleans sometime in the 1850s, and they created in 1857 the Mystic Crew of Comus, Comus, the Mystic Crew of Comus, God of Mirth. And so Comus was the first New Orleans Mardi Gras crew, which was instituted by these gentlemen from Mobile. So Mobile doesn't have an idle claim, and I think there's plenty enough credit to share.
Yeah, and a couple years ago I also learned that the first Queen of Rex, although she was not from Mobile, her family was a Mobile family, and so it's kind of cool to think the first Queen of Carnival in New Orleans. This it just has connections to both cities, I guess.
Yes, yes. And by the way, the Cowbellians are still around. It's a very select group of people, and you can't just join the Cowbellians. If you were not a part of the original Cowbellian group that came in the 1850s, then you're not going to be a Cowbellian. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I've watched the parade also during Mardi Gras weekend. It is very different than the parades here. You can tell they have not changed a lot of their traditions
Mhm.
over the course of, since the 1850s. So would you say that Mardi Gras then is more like French, Catholic, Southern, uniquely American? Like, how would you kind of categorize it?
I think certainly French and Catholic, and of course, New Orleans is heavily influenced by both through its history. Um, As far as Southern is concerned, interesting fact, other cities have tried to export Mardi Gras and have it take root in places like St. Louis, even Portland, Oregon, places like that that have said, hey, we want to have a Mardi Gras celebration here. And they were unsuccessful. I think part of it is not so much that uh, it's not in the South. I think what New Orleans has is a long history of not only good food and eating and drinking to excess, but also music. The music and the influence of so many different cultures in New Orleans. As you all know, jazz music was born to a large degree in New Orleans. And so that all of those things sort of intersect in New Orleans. And without any one of them, it's a difficult thing to transplant. And it probably wouldn't have happened in too many places other than New Orleans with all of the cultural influences we've had through history.
So I'm gonna kind of focus on you a little bit, Judge. How long? I know I've celebrated my Mardi Gras my whole life. Would you say the same?
Yes, as a child, my mother used to make our carnival uniforms, and we would all dress as cowboys or what have you, whatever the costume was that year my mother would make, and we would go out even in the very, very cold temperatures, almost freezing, and watch Rex come out of its den in the morning and go see the marching groups. And it was an all-day affair. And then my father would take us back to see Comus, which was the night parade we just mentioned. So Mardi Gras has always been a part of our life, and we always looked forward to it a great deal.
Would the whole family wear like
Whole
matching
family would
costumes?
wear the matching or some type of, it could be cowboys and Indians or something, which is probably not politically correct today, but whatever the theme was, we would either have the same costumes, my mother and father and my two siblings, or we would have something that interplayed together. And you'll see that today. If you come on Mardi Gras Day and stand on St. Charles Avenue, you will see groups of people who have sort of a themed costume where they're all wearing the same thing or they're wearing something that corresponds to the other's costume.
Yep, I'm going to a themed Mardi Gras party on Mardi Gras Day this year, and it's a garden theme. So I am
Oh, great.
working on my costume right now, actually. So I will probably work on it when I go home. So it's a lot of fun. And so how I mentioned earlier that you're involved in two crews. Can you talk about like your involvement in Mardi Gras organizations?
Sure. The room that you see behind me, of course, this is a virtual background, but I took this photograph in the Rex Den. The den is the headquarters of the organization where floats are kept and all of the crew's memorabilia and things of that sort, costumes. The photograph you're seeing is one of it's actually a float that rolls in the Rex parade, but that picture was taken in the Rex Den. Um, so I'm in the Rex organization, which was formed in 1872, and is sort of the granddaddy. It's the Mardi Gras Day crew that you'll see photographs of this a lot of times. If you look up Mardi Gras, you'll see the Rex Kings float or the Jester float or something like that. Friday evening, kicking off the whole Mardi Gras weekend, is the crew of Hermes, in which I'm involved as a board member. You mentioned earlier. Hermes is a great deal of fun. You can tell these are named after the gods, the Greek and Roman gods. Hermes, the god of the messenger. And I've been involved in Hermes for probably almost 20 years now. The Hermes Parade kicks off the weekend and it comes from uptown all the way down to Canal Street. And that parade, true to its namesake, is very fast. It rolls very fast. It's famous for throwing a lot of lighted, blinky throws, things that glow in the dark, because it's a night parade, very different than Rex. And I enjoy them both a great deal. Hermes was formed in 1937 by a group of businessmen during the Depression to try to to improve the economy of New Orleans. And so its membership consists largely of people in business, bankers, lawyers, accountants, doctors, you name it, anybody who's involved, builders, developers, anybody who's involved in the New Orleans business community, you'll likely find in Hermes, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm a little biased. Both my family and my in-laws, including my husband, are members of Hermes. So I'm a little
Hermes.
I say it's my favorite one, but I think I have to say that. So
No, and me too. I think in terms of the day it falls on with the build up and the excitement from the French Quarter that day during Friday, and then the Hermes parade is the first one out. And so a lot of people who come from out of town, Hermes will be the first parade they get to see. And so Hermes, we really try to put on a beautiful parade and a nice procession that people will enjoy and get a very initial favorable impression of what Mardi Gras is all about.
yeah. So you said the parade rolls at night. During the day, are you at work? Are you downtown? What does that look like leading up to the Friday night parade?
No, no, nobody, very few people work on Friday. People may go to work on Friday before Mardi Gras, but very few people work on Friday. I would say if you like the French Quarter, if you've been to the French Quarter and you like the quarter, the Friday before Mardi Gras, which is now officially recognized by the city as Hermes Friday, is probably the best day to be in the French Quarter all year. The place is just vibrating. There are a lot of people there. As I said, there are people coming into town for the first time. It's very exciting. There's a few marching bands that are part of the Hermes uh, day. A lot of people are down there for lunch, and it's just a lot of fun. And you'll see people you know and people that are just getting started with all of the fun of the weekend. The French Quarter is just a very vibrant place on that day.
And I'd mentioned earlier that you are the chairman of theme development
Yes.
for one of the crews. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, each Mardi Gras crew has a theme. And I should point out that, let me back up a little bit. Mardi Gras crews are private organizations. The Mardi Gras parades you see in Orleans Parish, which is downtown New Orleans in St. Charles Avenue, are all private organizations. They have no public funding. They have no corporate sponsorships. In fact, corporate sponsorships are prohibited by the city. So these are private organizations, and each parade will select every year a theme, and that theme will run through that year's celebration. So the one you see right now, I believe it's displayed, is the theme for this year, which is called Fabled Lands of Myth and Legend. And so each float, we have 35 floats in Hermes, and each float will be depicting an imaginary place that doesn't really exist, or a legendary place like Atlantis, or Puddle Beyond the Marsh, which is where Dr. Dolittle lived. So it could be places from novels, fictional novels. Neverland, of course, a fictional place like Neverland from Peter Pan would be one of the floats. And so the parade will execute that theme by depicting, each float will depict something involving the theme.
So I think this might be a good time. We actually had Judge was so kind of show me around the den where the floats are kept not long ago. So we do have a video that we can cut to that right now to show y'all.
Hi again, everyone. I'm here at the one of the Mardi Gras dens again. Hi again, everyone. I'm here at the one of the Mardi Gras dens again with Judge Engelhardt. And Judge Engelhardt, can you tell me a little bit about where we are right now?
Sure. This is the den. We call it a den where different crews store their floats, and it's sort of a headquarters for the course of the year of preparation. This is the den for the crew of Hermes, of which I'm a member. And the floats, as you can see, we'll take a walk through some of them. Most of them are almost finished, and they're being loaded with throws. You'll see some people working here, loading them with throws. I should point out behind each organization, I should say, each parade has a theme. This year's theme for the Hermes Parade is Fabled Lands of Myth and Legend. And you can see the float behind here that will show the crowd the theme. And then, of course, the floats that follow, which are all around us, will execute on that theme. So this year's theme is sort of a series of imaginary places from literature and mythology, the arts, and all types of places that don't really exist, but are very well known.
Great. And so when does all of this start? When does production on the floats begin?
As soon as Mardi Gras is over, these floats will be brought back in here. They're actually moving pieces apart. And they'll be on the street for maybe 3 hours, and then they roll them back in here, and they'll be completely whited out. Hermes is one of the crews that actually owns these chassis, everything underneath. So the float will be completely whited out. The props will be removed, and we will begin working on next year's theme, probably about 2 weeks after this Mardi Gras. And it'll take over the next year a lot of painting and a lot of detail work and a lot of conversations about what the parade should look like. And then we'll get to this point again, and then, of course, roll them for another 3 hours on the streets of New Orleans and then bring them back.
Great. So do you want to, let's walk through and maybe look at some of these floats? Okay.
Yes. I should say that certain organizations, the themes of the parades are dictated by the organization's purpose or motif. Some organizations are more satire. So, for instance, the parade that follows Hermes on Friday night is called Crew d'Etat. It is a satire parade, and they will hold about 3 or 4 floats until about a week before Mardi Gras, just for current events. If something newsworthy happens and they want to ridicule someone, they will keep one of those floats handy. But there's about 4 floats that they keep white until about a week before Mardi Gras. Now, of course, they're not as elaborate as these because they do them quick. But it could be national news, it could be a local issue, it could be just a current event, something that they can poke fun at. Hermes is a more traditional organization. We started in 1937, and the parade that we roll is more akin to what historically you would see at Mardi Gras.
Okay.
So these floats, as I said, are imaginary places. This one here, if you can see, is Valhalla. Of course, the holy place. The one here behind me is actually called Aea, which was an island, an imaginary island in Greek mythology that a sorceress lived on, and she would attract sailors to the island and turn them into pigs. So you can see the prop that explains the location, the imaginary place. And so each float is going to have that as a theme. We try to do the themes about 3 years in advance. We already have our 2028 theme. Our parade for 2027 is already designed. In other words, we already have all the sketches of what each float is going to look like in 2027. So when these are brought back here and they're stripped down, they can immediately start painting the 2027 parade.
No, so when you say props, is that
the figurehead, the thing on the front. Sometimes some crews put them on the front or the back or both. Ours in this parade typically are on the front, and the rest of the float is painted. One of the great things about Hermes is that each float is a different shape. Some crews have very boxy floats, and our floats are created, you can see, with a lot of curves and a superstructure on them. On each one is different. They're very unique. And that's one of the things I really like about Hermes is that's very old style, more traditional, old Mardi Gras style. So this is probably the most colorful Hermes parade since I've been involved in doing the themes. I think this theme is just one, anything that involves imagination. Last year we did a biography of Joan of Arc. It's called Visions of Joan of Arc. And it's a fun parade, but it was a chronology. So this year we call a series parade where each float is something different. Whereas last year Joan of Arc was sort of the beginnings all the way to her being burned at the stake or into her canonization. So those floats maybe were not quite as colorful, but they told the story. And that's, Hermes always has a little bit of gravity to their themes. They don't do, some of the crews do a lot of fun, Hermes takes a holiday or Hermes goes to Rome. We typically don't do those. So those are fun. Our themes are very literature-based, mythology, things like that, classical. We did the Tempest one, which was a wonderful parade. It told the story of the Tempest, which I thought it was before I got involved. That was one of my favorites. So each float here, you can see these are throws that are being loaded. Each float will carry anywhere from about 24 to 36 riders. This one's quite a size. And you can tell by the color of this particular float that it is the Emerald City. And we'll walk around to the front and you can see the Wicked Witch on the front. And we're still waiting for a couple of props of winged monkeys to go with her. I think it'll be popular given the movie that has come out. But the float behind me here, this one is called Tuttleby on the Marsh. For those of you who are familiar with Dr. Dolittle, on the side, which you can't quite see, is the Push Me Pull You. But this is where Dr. Dolittle lived in his literature. This one here is called El Dorado, the famous story of the Kingdom of Gold in South America. So it's El Dorado. This one here with the devil on the front is called Muspelheim, which is an imaginary place. It's got a huge devil on the front. But we hire, I should point out that for Mardi Gras, maybe we'll talk about this further, but Mardi Gras organizations are private organizations. There is no corporate sponsorship. You'll notice on none of these floats will you see a Coca-Cola sign or any type of corporate entity. These parades in Orleans Parish are funded by the members. The city doesn't give us money. There's no federal or public money involved. It's all funded by the members of the organization. And that's by law. The local ordinance requires us to not have corporate sponsorship. So none of the crews have that. Also, the crews some are all men and some are all women, and some are mixed. Hermes happens to be an all-male. But some of the biggest crews in Mardi Gras with Iris, Uses, some of these organizations are all women. Those are wonderful parades. Hermes is on the Friday before Mardi Gras, which is right when things get kicked off for the long weekend. A lot of people come into town. We parade first. We're the first parade to step off. So there's a lot of comes with the parade as it goes down St. Charles Avenue. Heads into downtown New Orleans. Hermes was formed in 1937, I mentioned, and it's a business organization. All of the members are people that were involved in the business community. And of course, as you know, during the Depression, 1937, their idea was to get together and try to have an event and attract some big people to come to New Orleans. So Hermes is not considered one of the, although it's older, it's not one of the old line crews that more exclusive in terms of membership. We like to have a lot of business people, a lot of lawyers that are members, bankers, accountants, anybody in any type of business can join Hermes with that sponsorship from a member or two. Always helps. But our organization is more business oriented, and the membership kind of prides itself on shares. You can make a lot of contacts as a Hermes member with other people in the business community.
Well, I think that's it for this part of the program, but thank you so much, Judge. This has been just so cool, and I know that others will be able to see all of this. So I hope everyone.
Thank you. My pleasure.
For doing that, Judge. I hope people got a little bit more of a, kind of had an idea of what the floats looked like up close.
Well, sorry about the audio, but as you could see, there were men working in there when we went over there preparing floats to roll on the street. So sometimes you can't get them to stay quiet while they're doing their job.
Was glad. When we got there, they were playing music over it, so at least they turned down the music so we could talk. But I like being able to see at least them throwing the bags of the throws onto the float, and I just forgot how many boxes of throws there were that just were filling up the den. But so it was great. That was so much fun.
The other thing I want to point out too about the Mardi Gras crews, in addition to being private organizations, several of the crews also have a very philanthropical arm. For instance, Hermes has something called Beyond the Parade, which is a 501c3 arm of the organization, and that part of Hermes donates first responder equipment. We've donated drug sniffing dogs. We've donated motorcycle rain gear for motorcycle police officers. We've donated a couple of vehicles, the little four-wheel all-terrain vehicles they use in the French Quarter. In fact, one of them I think has a Hermes logo on it. If you see them driving around, you might see the one we got for them. And the Rex organization has what they call the Pro Bono Publico Foundation, which raises a lot of money for the New Orleans public school system to supplement needs of teachers and things that the schools might need in the city of New Orleans. So in addition to being a lot of fun and a lot of work in anticipation to celebrate, we also try to do something that's very constructive for the city, and they greatly appreciate our help.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me on to the city's involvement with everything as well. So, Mardi Gras requires permits, policing, public infrastructure, etc. So how involved is the government in organizing Mardi Gras?
Well, the city has guidelines that we follow. There's a limit on the number of Mardi Gras parades that can be held in the city of New Orleans. So it's very competitive. If an organization loses its permit, it'll be scooped up quickly by another group. The city also, in addition to providing security and of course the sanitation, the cleanup, the city also has limitations on certain types of things that can be thrown. And there are actually some First Amendment issues here. They don't want people to throw advertisement or political content throws, doubloons. By the way, those of you who come to New Orleans, these little things here, some people call them coins. If you call them a coin, you'll be giving away your status as a visitor. they're called doubloons. Think of pirates and doubloons, and each organization will have a doubloon. You might be able to see this one a little bit better. Um, but these cannot have. At one point, one of the fried chicken chains had doubloons that you could throw, and people who catch them could bring them and get a free box of chicken, and that's prohibited by city ordinance. So there's no political statements to be made. There are no, except in the satire. Of course, I mentioned on the video some of the parades do satire, which is a lot of very funny political content. But generally, you can't advertise off of a float, and you can't make comments about the mayor, the commissioner of the NFL, the president, or whatever happens to be the bee in your bonnet. You can't take advantage of that on the float unless it's part of a satire theme.
Are certain crews allowed to do the satire then? Or, I mean, like, is that
Yeah,
kind of
certain crews have it as their point. If you go see, for instance, the parade that rolls behind Hermes is very famous. One year they had a float that depicted the two articles of impeachment against President Trump, and the front of the float had this figure of Nancy Pelosi, and that I happened to come across a photograph of that a friend of mine took a few days before the parade, and that photograph, maybe some of you have seen it. It kind of made its way around Washington, D.C., unbeknownst to me. But a lot of the early Mardi Gras crews, when I mentioned the dates, maybe you made the association that in 1872, when Rex was founded, New Orleans was in the midst of Reconstruction. And so some of the earlier parades poked fun at the so-called carpetbaggers and the fact that the federal government still exerted so much force and control politically over the city of New Orleans. So this isn't a new thing. This has been always part of the revelry in New Orleans.
Yeah, so given some of these unique practices, but also the logistics of Mardi Gras, are there any unique legal issues that have stemmed from the holiday that might seem surprising to a national audience?
Yes, yes. There are a lot of, first of all, trademark litigation. I can think of two cases in particular that were in the Eastern District of Louisiana, one of which involved Mardi Gras beads that had in this line of beads marijuana leaves, and those were popular. And then other people started making them, but they had already been protected as intellectual property, if you can imagine. And the other happened to be a pair of beads that had in the line of beads women's breasts. And so those two were the subject of litigation. In those were going to be copied as well. And so we've had that kind of litigation. We've also had litigation. I had a little checklist here in terms of parading organizations. We've had litigation over the leadership of some of the Mardi Gras organizations. The organizations are just like any other corporate structure with a president, a vice president, secretary, treasurer, and those people in many organizations are elected. And so just as you would have with any other corporation, there may be a power struggle. And so we've had some highly publicized litigation about that. Of course, contracts involving the construction of floats, things of that nature, have also been the subject of litigation. So New Orleans, Mardi Gras is not immune from the general legal practice. One thing that I think is unique about the holiday, as I mentioned, we both of us have mentioned a few times Mardi Gras throws, things that are thrown off of the floats. New Orleans has what is referred to sometimes as the coconut law. And it's a state of Louisiana statute that provides immunity to people who ride on Mardi Gras floats and throw beads and doubloons and trinkets and whatever you have off of a Mardi Gras float so that they don't get sued in case someone gets injured. It's called the coconut law because the crew of Zulu, which also rolls on Mardi Gras Day, they're famous for coconuts that they have hand painted. They're very well done, very, it's a great craft. And they give these out or toss them. And if someone gets hit by a coconut, hopefully they don't get injured too bad. But that's what started the push for immunity for Mardi Gras riders because the state values having Mardi Gras and having visitors come. And so we don't want to have Mardi Gras crews discontinue their practices because of course, we're all insured. we have the same type of liability policies that any other festival organization would have. But we do enjoy immunity with the exception of some type of intentional act or some type of malicious act. Float riders and parading organizations have immunity by state law.
Yeah, when I learned that, I could almost not believe it. But I mean, it makes sense, right? Mardi Gras would probably
Yep.
not be nearly as fun. I mean, the float riders would have to be a little bit more careful, but it's hard to do that when you have all the crowds and people are yelling at you. And so this way it's so I mean, I've been hit in the head multiple times with things that are thrown off of the floats, but that's kind of part of what you're kind of taking that risk when you're
Well,
going to the parades.
and part of the problem is that when you're on a float and we try to make eye contact so someone knows they're getting something thrown to them, but you don't know if they can hear you, you don't know if they can look at you. So you may throw something with everything that's going on and a very active crowd, you may throw something to someone and then all of a sudden they look away and it hits them in the side of the face. And then you feel bad about it, but it's just sort of a miscommunication, and it's a nature of the holiday. And hopefully, like I said, nothing is thrown that would cause a serious injury, but there have been instances where people have broken glasses or something like that. Doesn't happen very often, but it is a bit of a hazard to go to a Mardi Gras parade if you're not paying attention. Some of these guys, men and women, throw a lot of throws all at once.
My problem is I have no hand-eye coordination, so I will make eye contact and then I will not catch the throw. And I think that's more disappointing. I'll see the float rider just like throw up their hands. So it is what it is. But I did not do any sports that had hand-eye coordination in high school for that reason. I was a track. So but so just a few more questions. So Mardi Gras is probably the biggest tourist attraction to New Orleans every year. Does tourism strengthen Mardi Gras or does it slowly hollow it out, would you say?
I think it probably strengthens Mardi Gras. Um, Mardi Gras is known by some people as the greatest free show on earth. There's no admission. You can go to as many parades as you like, or not go to any. Enjoy Mardi Gras season. There are a lot of other things going around to celebrate Mardi Gras, not just parades. But it is a great attraction, and people do travel to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. It's a very symbiotic relationship between the crews, who, as I said, are not publicly funded, and the city, who has to expend funds for police and security and for sanitation to clean up. But the city makes a lot of money in terms of tax dollars from hotels, restaurants, and things like that, bars and places where people come and spend money. I think it's good that tourists come to New Orleans. I think it's a great attraction. It's a good time of the year to be in New Orleans, right at the beginning of spring, especially if you're from someplace where it's very cold until April or May. New Orleans is a nice place to come visit at this time of the year. So I think the tourism, plus the tourists bring a lot of excitement because it's things that they'll see things they've not seen before. And I don't mean just the prurient interest on Bourbon Street, but rather the Mardi Gras celebration itself, the floats, the riders, like the things you see behind me here. Those are costumes, headpieces for what we call dukes. I have right here, this is actually I don't know if you can see it here, see if I can on Zoom here. This is actually a headpiece for the Hermes organization. I don't know if you can see, there's the top of it there, but it kind of looks like the ones that are behind me on my virtual background. But you'll see, tourists will see things that they won't see anywhere else. And it's very colorful and there's a lot of music and bands, and I think people would have a good time.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a little bit about what's behind you. So the masks are really actually a very important symbol about Mardi Gras. Can you explain what the meaning of the point of the masks are?
Yeah, well, Mardi Gras is supposed to be a time when you can sort of, again, it's pre-Lenten. The solemnity and the gravity of the Lenten season is anticipated by people being able to enjoy themselves to excess. And so one of the ideas behind the mask is that you can go out and have more fun when people don't know who you are, or if you're masked, people, you can just kind of let your hair down a little bit more. This is kind of more of an Italian style mask. This is a Mardi Gras mask. You can see the ribbons on each side that you could tie it. But masking's a really important part of Mardi Gras. Not everybody does it. It's not required. But you will see the most of the riders in both Rex and Hermes, not every organization, but most of the riders in the parades will have masks, and that's also required. But masking is an important part of it, and it adds to the fun because you can pick whatever kind of mask you want, and you'll see a variety of things on Mardi Gras Day that are very clever that people have chosen. So,
So I'm
so the
gonna
room, you mentioned the room behind me. Again, this is in the Rex Den. On Mardi Gras morning, the people who ride the horses in the Rex parade will wear purple, green, and gold costumes. And these are the hats behind me, all laid out, ready for their rider to come. I think underneath there, you might be able to see there are some boots, riding boots stuck underneath. And then there's
Mhm.
a row of costumes, which well, you can see one of them in the back corner. But the riders will come on Mardi Gras morning, and there's a ceremony. There's a Marine band there. It's very regimented, and then they'll put their costumes on and get on their horse and ride in the Rex Parade on Mardi Gras morning.
Well, and so not Mardi Gras morning, but you ride your horse Donut on Fridays, like I mentioned earlier,
Friday
right?
night. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
So how did you? So you don't ride the floats then on Friday night? You just ride
No,
those. You ride them
I
on
used
Tuesday.
to, and they allowed me. I asked, I said, well, I'd kind of like to the experience of riding on the horse, which is a lot more crowd interaction. And so that picture that you see is it's one of the purple Hermes costumes, and that's Donut, and I'm riding Donut in that picture at the very beginning of the parade on Magazine Street in New Orleans. Those are two of my clerks from last year, last Mardi Gras, Greta and Rachel, who were going to the parade. And of course, they knew they were one of the two of the few people who knew what I would be doing. Not everybody, of course, I have the mask on. No one would know that it was me unless I told them. So Greta and Rachel were aware that Donut would be at the start of the parade. And much to my surprise and delight, they actually went and found Donut at the beginning of the parade. If you look closely, I don't know if you can see it, if the picture's too small, but Donut has a sash across his neck, a purple, green, and gold sash. He also has his hooves painted gold, which they do. The horses belong to Cascade Stables, which is part of the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans, and so they come out at Mardi Gras time and are participate in the parade. Donut is the horse I've been riding now for the last 4 years.
And how? So that's such a fun name. Is it? But wasn't there a specific reason for his name? I.
Well, we're not sure. Donut is a rescue horse, I think from
Okay.
Mississippi originally. It is a rescue horse. All I know is that when I am on Donut, he has to be moving all the time. I don't know what it is about his nature, but some of the horses will stop and wait if the parade stops, whereas Donut has to walk around and do the little circles. And as soon as I get on at the beginning of the parade, whether the parade started or not, Donut has to walk up and down the street, which is kind of fun in a way. In another way, I worry that he's a little agitated because with the crowd and the noise, you never know how they're going to react. But he's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. So before I know we're getting close to that time, so I'll ask a couple of the questions that we've gotten from the audience. So first, does every crew have a king, and how, and a queen, and how do you become one?
Okay, every crew generally does have a king and queen. There are different ways to become king or queen. Queens are usually the daughters of someone in the crew. They're selected in different ways. And it's an honor to be the queen of a Mardi Gras organization. Sometimes it's very competitive between some of the older organizations who have family. If your grandmother was the queen of Rex, that's kind of a big deal, and you may be in line for that. Other organizations are a little less rigid in terms of the selection. Now, as far as the king is concerned, um, there are a couple of organizations that have a celebrity king. The crew of Bacchus, which is on Sunday night before Mardi Gras, always has a celebrity. They've had in the past people like Bob Hope. Shaquille O'Neal was a couple of years ago. Jackie Gleason. A lot of people over history, the famous people that have been the king of Bacchus. Some of the organizations, one of the largest, Endymion, picks their a name out of the hat. A member, you could be an Endymion for a year or two, and if your name is in the hat, and you pick your name, well, then you can be the king of Endymion, which is a huge parade. It's a Saturday night parade, kind of a really big deal. Other organizations pick the king in a very closed way. For instance, Hermes, I don't know. I'm on the board. I don't know who the king of Hermes will be next Friday. I will find out tomorrow night because we have a dinner tomorrow night where that will be announced to the membership. But that will be kept confidential. In other words, it will not be publicized. It won't be known to the public. And then there are some people like the King of Comus. Nobody ever knows who the King of Comus is except for very few people. And he stays masked throughout the ball. He never take his mask off. And so there is a very small group of people. He may be one of the Cowbellians, I think, or some people in that echelon of Mardi Gras royalty or confidentiality. The thin air is going to be the King of Comus.
Yeah, no, it's always so interesting, the levels of secrecy. So and then another question, kind of different topic. Do you have any experience attending any of the Career de Mardi Gras? The person that asked was just interested because Mardi Gras celebrations throughout the state can be quite different from New Orleans.
Yeah, I have not been to the ones around the state, but that's a great question because there's a Mardi Gras celebration in Mamou, a place called Mamou, Louisiana, Mamou, and that is an old Cajun celebration. It's very different from New Orleans Mardi Gras, and it's been around for a very long time. Um, it's more rural, almost Southwest Louisiana. I've not been to those, but there are a few around the state that are markedly different from New Orleans, but they all celebrate the same thing. It's all about the pre-Lenten preparation.
Yeah, I have a friend from Church Point and they
Church
chase
Point.
chickens. It's like all the men come out and they let chickens loose and you can catch
Yes,
a chicken on for that's a big deal. So that's we do not chase chickens in New Orleans. It's very
right,
different.
right.
So hope I it is a bucket list item for me to see that. So
Yeah, it's very unique and it hasn't changed over decades and decades and decades. It's the same look of the costumes and it's very, very traditional.
yeah. So and then what was do you know what the very first item that was thrown from a float? Mobile is famous for throwing moon pies, while New
Yes.
Orleans primarily throws beads and doubloons. So yeah, do you know the first thing that was thrown?
I don't know for sure. I would suspect there was something like beads of some sort, or some type of memento. Doubloons, which I mentioned earlier, coins started in 1960, and Rex was the first organization to throw doubloons. Now there are things like stuffed animals and plush toys, and as I mentioned, lighted throws, necklaces, and things of that sort. But throws were something that really developed later in Mardi Gras, probably after World War II, when organizations started giving out some type of memento, whether it was a pair of beads or something like that. When I was a kid, everybody wanted glass beads, and it was hard to catch something at a parade. If you caught something at a parade, you felt great that you finally. But now crews throw so much that it's hard not to catch something.
Mhm.
You'll
Yeah,
probably
the
leave a
glass
parade
beads.
with a big bag of stuff if you go.
Yeah, no, the glass beads are still a coveted item. At least
Mhm.
they are for me. So there's some very unique things. So I'm gonna just to because I know we're getting close on time. I'm gonna ask you a few more kind of rapid style fire questions.
Okay.
So first, what is your favorite king cake filling? And also, what is we can talk about king cake as well.
Well, I'm kind of a traditionalist. It's funny you asked that because we happen to have in my chambers today three different king cakes in my chambers alone, and then the library in the Fifth Circuit Courthouse today had a king cake tasting party. Uh, I was involved. I wasn't able to go to it, but at 3:30 today, they had a king cake party in the little dining room, and they had all kinds of king cakes. I'm a traditionalist. I like the plain ones. Some of them are cream cheese filled, and I like those as well. But they're all great. I've tried different kinds, and we're kind of experimenting with them with my clerks right now, and I'll get their take on them on Ash Wednesday. We'll figure out which ones they like the best.
Okay, and what is the deal with the baby in the king cake?
Ah, yeah, the baby and the king cake. Now that's actually an old tradition, but it used to be a bean, and whoever got the bean would be the queen of the organization. And this dates back to the late 1800s. That's where the tradition started. So the baby in the king cake now is a little plastic baby. It's probably about maybe no bigger than your little finger. And if you get the baby, if your piece of king cake has the baby in it, that is a sign that you need to buy the next king cake next time everybody gets together. So some people like to get the baby, and other people try to eat around it. And then some people you have to actually make them fess up that they got the baby and need to buy the king cake. But that's the tradition.
Oh wow. No, we save all the babies in my house. I have a
Yes,
jar, which is a little odd. It's a strange thing to have a jar of tiny plastic babies.
yes.
Because
Well,
people make jewelry and things out of them.
Well, there's a tray on my conference room table that has several babies of, purple babies and all from king cakes. And so when my clerks start, those who are not familiar with it, walk in and say, "What are all these babies doing in here? Where did these come from? Why are they? What do they mean?"
Yeah, it's so strange, but it's so normal
Yeah, yeah.
to me. Yeah. So okay, if you see beads on the ground during a parade, what do you do?
Beads on the ground. I probably today nobody picks up beads on the ground. Now, back when like I said, when I was a child, any beads were good beads because you probably weren't going to get many of them. But now, when beads hit the ground, depending on what kind they are, most of the time people won't pick up beads off the ground. Kind of a shame, but I guess people, especially if you're much younger than me, beads on the ground are bad news. I wouldn't pick them up. But like I said, when I was a child, to get beads anyway was a good thing.
Yeah, now it's seen as bad luck, and you are
Yes,
also
yes,
showing that you're not from New Orleans if you pick up beads off the ground.
right, right.
So, and then what is the best? I know we talked about the doubloons and all the different throws. What is the best throw in your opinion?
I would say the best throw is probably something you can keep for a long time. Um, the crews recently, and Rex started the practice of stainless steel cups. Now, these things will last forever, and they come in different colors, and they have the cruise logo on one side and the theme on the other. Most crews were throwing plastic cups of the sort. Yeah, there you go. Most crews were throwing plastic cups for a long time of the sort you might get at a football game. Rex started with these stainless steel cups, and I think they're beautiful. Every year they have a different design, purple, green, and gold. That particular set has the Rex King's float on it. Those you can keep forever. And of course, they're practical. You can use them in the kitchen. I like those. The doubloons, some people collect the doubloons. Um, I like having them. Well, some people don't really care too much about them, but the doubloon has the crew logo on one side and the theme on the other. If you go on eBay, you can actually find some older doubloons that have gone up in price quite a bit. The ones that are relatively rare, but you can see things on eBay. A lot of old Mardi Gras memorabilia, ball invitations from the late 1800s and early 1900s are for sale, and some of those can be quite costly.
I'm a little also impartial to the throws that people decorate over the course of the year. Like you mentioned
Yes,
the
yes.
coconuts. Those are a lot of fun. I have a few. There's one crew that paints plungers and things, and I have a few sparkle like glitter covered plungers in my home that I do pull out every Mardi Gras because it's it's part of the decoration, I guess, now at this
Yeah.
point.
Well, the crew of Muses is an all-women's crew, very popular. They're on the Thursday night. They're the Thursday night before Hermes. It's an all-women's crew, and they're known for their shoes. They actually spend all year decorating shoes, high heel shoes, any kind of shoes, and they're beautifully done. They have sequins on them, some of them. And that's the thing. It's just like getting a coconut at Zulu would be to get a shoe at the Muses Parade. That's their signature throw.
So I think this is all the time that we might have today. I don't have any more questions coming in the queue, but this has been great, Judge. You have anything you want to close us off with?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to explain Mardi Gras. to people who are interested in it. And I hope people come down and see what Mardi Gras is like. It's a lot of fun, and it's something that I enjoy a great deal. And I know the people like yourself who are familiar with it really get the idea of the somberness of the celebration, the reason we have it, but also appreciate how much fun it is. And that's the whole point, is to get people together and have some fun, but also don't lose the fact that we do this for a very serious purpose, because we know Lent is going to start on Ash Wednesday, and we'll go through that season and have the renewal of Easter.
Yeah, so no more parades after Mardi Gras Day, right?
No more parades after Mardi Gras Day. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Judge, and thanks everybody for joining us. This has been so fun. And thank you to FedSoc for giving us the chance to talk about, in my opinion, the best holiday that there is. So
Thank you all.